Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Pete, Films and Stuff. How are you today?
I am great, Ethan. How are you?
I'm great as well. It is time for our weekly stream or skip segment.
As usual, Ethan has assigned a list of TV shows and TV series and sometimes movies for me to watch. And I've done the same for Ethan to watch. And these are all shows that we would normally never watch under our own volition. And the idea is that we watch at least 2 episodes, if not more, and make a gut decision as to whether we think it's a good show or not. And we give it a quick fire review on that basis. It gives us a basis of comparison for expanding our horizons with the media landscape. And it gets us out of our comfort zones because I hate scary movies. I'm not a huge fan of teen comedies. But if it's on the list, I have to watch it.
Pete, you've been riding a hot streak at your proverbial blackjack table, so to speak. This week, we both had sci-fi, but you had from Amazon Prime something called Tales from the Loop. Tell me.
Yep. So again, this is a show you put on my list I had never even heard of. So granted, it is a little older. It's a 2020 TV series, so I can understand why it wouldn't. Yeah, so I can kind of understand why it wouldn't be promoted on the front page of Amazon Prime. But I mean, I'm also getting shows that are really bad from like the late 90s, early 2000s promoted on my front page. So I don't know what's going on with Amazon's, recommendation system.
Algorithm is all over the place.
Something is not quite right there.
Yeah.
So normally the way I usually do this is I break it down, I give you a little bit of a premise, and then we move forward, and I give you my score. Tales from the Loop, it's hard to do that because it's an anthology series. And that's really rare to see, but I loved it. So an anthology series is effectively a TV show that has many different stories that are loosely connected around maybe a plot thread or maybe under a theme or something like that. So each episode is basically its own story that's kind of unrelated to everything else.
Okay.
You can watch one episode of this series and then you watch the second one and it's got next to nothing to do with what you saw in the first one because it's not a drama in the traditional sense. It's dramatic, but it's not a drama in that there's one story going through the entire season.
Is there any continuity in terms of characters, technology?
Yes. So that's what makes this a different anthology than most other. When I think of anthology series, the best example I can give you, and this is maybe dating myself, but the Animatrix came out after The Matrix and before Matrix 2 and 3.
Okay.
And it was what the Wachowski siblings had done at that time was they went to a bunch of different animators and said, okay, I want you to make a 10-minute animated story about the world within the Matrix, but it's not related to Neo, it's not related to Trinity, nothing like that. You get to make your story. We're going to make an anthology.
Huh.
And the loose theme was The Matrix. And so every story had to do with The Matrix, but nothing to do with The Matrix movies as we know them from the cinema. Another more recent example, which is also animated, is Netflix's Love, Death, and Robots.
Yeah,
which I have recommended in the past.
Yes. And I have watched a few episodes.
Exactly.
Solid.
And so the good thing, episodes are hit or miss. So some of them are going to be phenomenal. Some of them are going to be meh. Some of them are going to be terrible. You really have to watch all of them to get an idea of how the overall season was. So for example, I thought season 1 of Love, Death, and Robots was excellent because on average, every episode was very good. I think season 2 was slightly weaker, but still good. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so Tales from the Loop. The overarching premise is that the story is set in small town USA. Okay? By that I mean it's just a generic small town.
Okay.
And everybody in that town effectively works for this mysterious organization / corporation that's colloquially known as the Loop.
Okay.
And it's some kind of sci-fi, science-based, research laboratory that's built under the ground below the town.
Okay.
And they're researching very mysterious things, like meteorites that have fallen but can somehow float, blah, blah, blah. It's some crazy stuff. I don't want to say too much because I also think that based on just the first episode and maybe even the second episode, I'm actually pretty sure that you are going to enjoy this.
I am looking forward to it, yeah.
The advantage to the anthology shows is that each episode is standalone. So you can kind of watch the episode, and then if you don't finish the whole season, you're not really losing out too much. Although I imagine by the end of the last episode, we're going to come full circle and complete the loop, pun intended.
So everything is about this town and the underground thing, right?
And more specifically, the people who work there.
Can I just ask, is this set in modern day, 1,000 years in the future?
Great question, because when you look at it, it looks relatively small town modern, but it's got the feel of what people in the 60s thought the modern era would look like.
Huh.
So it's not that you see flat screen TVs, you don't see like hover cars, things like that, but you also see robots that look more like the robots we saw in RoboCop, which are, a bit clunky and a bit, that kind of thing. The best example I can give you is if you've ever played the Fallout series, the video game.
Yeah.
It feels like Fallout before the nuclear devastation. So it's the image of what people in the 60s, 70s, and 80s would have thought the future was like, but on a slightly more realistic basis. I really can't describe it. It's an aesthetic that you'll instantly recognize if you've played the Fallout universe.
Okay.
The very first episode, you're introduced to this girl. You find out that her mom works for the Loop. Mm-hmm. And you find out that she's stolen from something from the Loop and conducts an experiment on that thing that she's stolen. And then she disappears. And she doesn't just disappear, but her daughter is left to fend for herself. She goes back home from school and the house is gone. Her mom is gone. And
the house is gone?
Gone like there's an empty plot. Not even like with foundations. It's completely brand new empty. She finds the object that her mom stole from the Loop. And when she throws it away because she's so angry that she can't find her mom, it just floats in midair. Then she finds a shack, and in that shack, there's kind of like this weird gravity well where the snow is floating upwards. And then you see what looks like flashbacks, and then you see that her house is disintegrating but floating upwards. So it's really weird. It looks awkward. And at first I was like, oh, I'm in on that basis. But then episode 2, you find some of the same characters that you see in episode 1. But that's it. It's not. The story is completely different. And I don't even want to tell you what that story is about because it's actually quite brilliant. And it goes off in a completely different tangent. And then I watched the first 5 minutes of episode 3. And again, the main character in episode 2 becomes a side character in episode 3. And it's another new family and another new story. But it's all based on this one town. So that's what makes this different from other anthologies. It's that it's an anthology series, but with the same cast of characters and the same very high level premise. Everyone's working for this mysterious organization. The sci-fi element is there, but I think it's more focused on the mystery element as to what is the Loop, what's going on in there. I haven't finished the series yet, but I imagine that by the end of the final episode, all of the stories will kind of click into place like puzzle pieces.
Oh, man. So this is a keeper, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. This is for me. I mean, I was confused by at the end of the first episode because I was intrigued to see the more of the story go on.
Yeah.
I saw the second episode, immediately realized it's an anthology, and then I was all in. I really like this kind of concept. So for me, it's a subscribe. And I strongly recommend that you watch the episodes. I imagine over the course of this, even if you don't love the whole season, you're going to find specific episodes are going to be unbelievable.
Dude, you are on a incredible hot streak.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
Tales from the Loop, Pieces of Her, you had Minx, you had Industry. You've been really, like, for the last month and a half, you've been on a hot streak.
On a hot streak. Absolute hot streak. And barring the Full Metal Alchemist, I even had the Bear. So, basically the last 2 months has been excellent in terms of this show.
Yeah. Full Metal Alchemist, I think, was the one that
Outlier.
was not so great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's great news. Okay, so this is Tales from the Loop sci-fi, about 2 years old. It's just one season?
Yes. So I don't know if they're making a second season or not. I couldn't really find anything online, but from what I understand, this is just one season.
Amazon Prime. Well done, Pete. Okay.
All right. This is the one I'm excited for.
Pete was generous enough to assign me Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which is on Paramount Plus. And it is, interestingly, supposedly kind of like not a prequel, but it's intended to be prior to Star Trek, the original series. So I think to put this in perspective, we need to look back at the history of all the different Star Treks, which is not easy, but I'll do my best. And I think we've talked about this previously. The original series, this was back 1966. Kirk and Spock and Sulu and all the other folks, right?
It's almost 60 years ago.
Yeah. Unbelievable, right? And then we had a few standalone movies with that same Star Trek cast.
Yeah.
We also had an animated series at one point, which I think was actually in the 70s. And then we had kind of a break, and we picked it up again with
The Next Generation.
The Next Generation, and then there was Voyager.
Yep. There was a small overlap with Voyager. Then there was a small overlap with Voyager and Deep Space Nine.
Mm-hmm. And then there was
Enterprise,
Lower Decks.
Yep. So after Enterprise, again, there was a break.
Yeah.
Because I think Enterprise was like early 2000s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And then you had Lower Decks, which has just finished its third season this week.
Yeah. And most recently, I guess it was Discovery, which is kind of the most modern version.
Yes.
Strange New Worlds is supposedly a prequel, so it doesn't have all of the same characters that you would know from the original. There is a James T. Kirk, but he will be introduced later. Mm-hmm. It's primarily known for Captain or Admiral Pike.
Yeah.
Spock is in it, and Number One.
Spock as Number One, or is Number One a separate character?
Spock is Spock, and Number One is Number One.
Okay.
So there's some crossover and some introduction of characters that we've been introduced to previously, but it's not exactly, the same folks. So that was the context that I watched this in. And I have to say, I had extraordinarily high expectations for this. Maybe not expectations, but hope for this, because I really wanted this to be understanding how, maybe the Federation came together, how the Enterprise was built. I mean, I was really taking this back, like several degrees in terms of, how we got, Kirk, how we got Spock, how we got so many other things, right? We've kind of seen this a little bit in the movies, but I think they've kind of mucked it up, and it wasn't really a true prequel. It was just kind of like a one-off movie, and I think that I've disregarded that in terms of like canon or anthology. So I watched 2.5 episodes of Strange New Worlds. I've been flatly disappointed by it for a few reasons. The first is that if you're, in terms of just kind of the overall feel or the vibe, it's extraordinarily optimistic and collaborative. which are very, very admirable things. To be honest, we need more television. We need more entertainment that is a positive influence on us and shows people how to work together as a team and, how a can-do optimistic attitude is a substitute to overcome any type of obstacle or problem, right? Absolutely, absolutely positive traits. But I have to say, I was a little bit turned off by the way that this optimism or this collegiality was kind of used as a resource, For example, there are these, kind of directives, right? Which are these federation laws, in terms of, what you can do to rules of engagement, for example, right?
Yeah.
When you can attack, when you cannot attack, when you can arm your torpedoes, when you can put up your deflector shields, so on and so forth. These rules are cited as kind of unbreakable. They must be followed. Yet in every episode, they are somehow broken or subverted or circumvented because the captain or one of his crew finds that in the face of this problem that they cannot otherwise overcome, the necessity to overcome this problem trumps whatever directive or whatever law they were previously following, right? And this is all kind of done in the name of harmony and saving humankind and collegiality and loyalty and all these other very good qualities. That's okay, but it was really annoying that we have these directives, but the directives really don't have any power, right? It was just always you were finding these, anyone can kind of solve a problem, I guess, if you can just kind of make up the rules as you go, right? You're saying, oh, well, we can't attack or we can't show ourselves because of directive number X or Y. They say, well, you know what? In this case, the requirement to save humanity is more important than this directive. So let's show ourselves. Let's give them this technology. Let's do this or whatever the other thing is. So I was a little bit frustrated by the fact that they were putting these rules in place, but then they were just kind of breaking the rules whenever it was convenient for the storyline. And I guess the second part of this is that the cast was not really giving me any. It just seemed like it was a group of people kind of thrown together rather than having any cohesiveness. I didn't feel any sense that the cast was really operating as a team, even though the theme was teamwork and collaboration and everyone had this expertise and ad nauseum they explained that this is the most talented scientist or security officer or so on and so forth in the galaxy. I wasn't seeing any of these qualities come up. And I just felt it was a hodgepodge of cast people, and they didn't really have any type of, there was no chemistry, to be honest. So overall, and the same thing with Star Trek. I guess Star Trek has such a great brand, and it's known for such innovation. And I wasn't really feeling anything on an episode by episode basis. You and I have seen how many Star Trek episodes in our lifetime? 100? 200? I mean, so many, right? There was nothing really new. They were just kind of inventing the same old problems, and everyone's standing on the bridge. And whenever the Enterprise is hit by a photon torpedo, everyone kind of gyrates and pretends that they're falling out of their seat, right? And then, of course, there's a few calculations and the captain has an idea and they overcome the issue. It was nothing new. So I actually gave this a pretty low score. I would say if you're a Star Trek fan, it's a mooch. If you don't have any connection to Star Wars at all, it's a skip. But the reviews, if you can believe them, have actually been quite positive for the show. So I felt a little bit out of step with it, which is one of the reasons I messaged you, Pete, and I asked you to take a look at it to see what your feeling was. But I thought that this was, for a Star Trek franchise on Paramount Plus, I thought it was the minimum effort you could kind of expect.
And tell me again how many episodes you ended up watching?
I only watched 2.5.
Okay.
I mean, there was no interesting science. I felt everything was just kind of manufactured. Whatever problem there was, they'd go to the sick bay or whatever bay, and someone would say, "Oh, well, all I have to do is inject you with this, and the problem will be solved." Or, "All we have to do is recalculate this, and the problem will be solved." It was just everything I felt like was being manufactured solutions. There wasn't really like any creativity in terms of how these things were being approached, which is a little bit consistent with the original Star Treks, right? The original Star Treks were always problem. Captain Kirk would use his, I don't want to say like his masculinity.
I was just about to say his sexuality, right? And masculinity.
He'd use his charisma, to convince everybody like this is what should be done, right? And they'd solve the problem because he was able to convince everybody to lay down their arms or to let them pass or to give them a chance or blah-de-blah-de-blah. So I have to say, in terms of the style, you can see very much that they tried, like the uniforms, for example. These are not like next generation uniforms. These are uniforms that you can tell they tried to make them a modern take on what you would have probably seen in the original in the 60s, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't have like next generation, right? They've got like these really tight like red leotards on and stuff, right? The typical Picard stuff, right?
Yeah.
Whereas here they've got the same kind of, Kirk had like that mustard yellow thing and the blue for Spock and so forth. They've kind of got the same things, but you can tell that they're tailored, they're a little bit modernized, but the resemblance is quite similar,
Right.
So from that perspective, I thought it was great, but the same thing. The bridge of the ship is the same. The sick bays are the same. The hallways are the same. Everything was, I just didn't get a lot out of it, to be honest.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give it a go anyway.
Please
just
do.
Because that's something you also recommended that I tried just to see, a sanity check between the two of us in case you're missing something or in case you're absolutely bang on and you're right and it's boring or it's not
I think
great.
you should. I think you should. I mean, I love Star Trek. And to be honest, I could see myself if I'm having breakfast one morning and my laptop's in front of me, watching an episode.
Right.
And I can also see myself, to be honest, when I finish breakfast and I'm ready to leave, if the episode's not over, I just close my laptop and I'm okay with that. I do not see myself, there's some things that you and I have watched where it's like, all right, Friday night.
Yep.
Get your popcorn,
right.
Get your comfortable socks on, turn off the lights, get everything ready, turn off your mobile, like, gotta put all my attention into this, right? It's not that.
Yeah.
It's, I'm eating eggs, kind of watching it. I turn around to put my dish in the dishwasher. I don't see the screen for 15 seconds. Nothing's lost kind of thing,
Right.
So for me, this is, again, personally, I think this is a skip. If you're really a Star Trek Trekkie and fanatic about Star Trek, it's a mooch.
Yeah, but
it's really a mooch.
Yeah, but this review isn't for them because it doesn't matter. Right?
No.
They're going to watch it no matter what. So
yeah, but for me, it's a skip. Like I said, it's possible I could watch another episode. I'll never sit down an evening and pound through 2 or 3.
Okay.
You win some, you lose some with streamer skip, right? Yeah, so my last few weeks were Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Before that, I had Yellow Jackets, which you know how much I loved. I had A Model Family, which was a solid mooch. Our Flag Means Death was terrible. That was a skip. Then I had The Tourist, which was a must subscribe. So I've been kind of, in the last 5 weeks, I had 2 solids, 2 duds. But yeah, your hot streak is almost unprecedented.
Well, let's keep it going.
Let's keep it going. What do we have next week?
You have been assigned Julia by HBO Max.
What is that?
I think it's about Julia Child.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've been assigned Tell Me Lies.
Don't know what that is, do you?
No idea, on Hulu.
Tell Me Lies. If you'll look at our list, we have each assigned each other number 13 on my list is The White Lotus.
Yeah.
And number 10 on your list is The White Lotus.
Yeah. I've heard really good things about that.
I was going to say the same thing. I was actually really hoping that I would get The White Lotus. Maybe we should just do that.
I think we should just watch it. It's especially because it's on both our lists. I think we should just go ahead and watch it.
All right. So you'll do Tell Me Lies on Hulu, which I'm going to guess is either it sounds like it's a romance gone bad, and then it ends up in a kidnapping or killing or something. Julia, I think you're right, is about Julia Child and her cooking exploits.
That's right. I mean, I don't know anything about it, but I heard that was also doing very well.
Okay, I'm looking forward to this. So we knocked out Star Trek Strange New Worlds. That's a mouthful. Tales from the Loop, which I have to take a look at. Let's see what we've got next week with Julia for me and Tell Me Lies for you.
Perfect. Sounds great, Ethan. And if you guys have any shows that you want us to add to our list, we will bump it up in priority. We will watch it immediately.
Yes.
Leave a comment below this video.
Queue.
Send us an email, aloha@filmsandstuffpodcast.com, or tweet at us at FNSPodcast, #stream or skip. We will definitely watch the shows that you want us to.
Okay, everybody. Pete, thank you for your time. Listeners, thank you for your time. We see you next time. Films and Stuff, stream or skip.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.